Welcome, reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I'm H.A. Conrad, as always, here with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart. Good morning.
For the purposes of this podcast, I'm going to change my name to
Mysterio Pants.
Okay.
A magical, mysterious name that only people who live in junk piles might have.
Yes, junk piles and who apparently like Mad Max films. That's just a little teaser into what we'll be talking about today, which are our reviews of episodes 9 and 10 of The Walking Dead Season 7. I sense some infuriation coming along here. Before we get to that, we have a few news items. Couple of things. One is that fans of Axis and Allies, who are really into that game. I remember playing that when I was a kid. I definitely have not played as an adult, but are you into the tabletop games at this point, Stuart?
Every so often, sure. I've been kind of more into D&D in the last year than tabletop games, but however, I don't think this is necessarily a version of this game that's going to only appeal to people who used to play Axis and Allies, which was always famous for being like 8 to 10 hours to finish a game, right? You'd have to like set it up on a table and come back to it day after day. And I've actually never played it. This is like a reimagining from Avalon Hill Games. They say you can finish a game of Axis and Allies and zombies in 1 to 3 hours.
Really? I don't know if I believe that, but I guess maybe with the new rules that would work. See, I remember playing this in college, and I think it was with some of our friends that we have in common. So I'm wondering, and I vaguely remember playing this at your apartment, like on Summit Avenue, but this could be just a dream. But in any case, perhaps with the new rules and that it would be a shorter game, this could be interesting. I can't guarantee that I will give it a try, but I'll consider it.
Yeah, I guess so. The zombie faction, I think, is a game run faction. I don't think they're run by players. So they'll be kind of like I don't know if you ever played one of these board games where you like flip a card and then something terrible happens. Yep. It's along those lines. So yeah, I think it could be fun. I don't necessarily want. I don't know what this is going to be going for. I think the original Axis and Allies went for like $100 because of all the pieces.
Yeah, it was pretty extensive.
But this is soon to be released. Yeah, I'd say in the next couple months, because I've been hearing them talk a lot about it on the Wizards of the Coast Dragon Talk podcast, which I do listen to. And they own Avalon Hill, so Wizards of the Coast does. So they've been talking it up a little bit.
Yep. Well, we will stay tuned for that. Maybe I'll be convinced to try to see if that works out. I do have some gaming friends who I suspect would be very much into this, so to be continued. Next up, in Ohio, there are some issues with some raccoons recently. Basically, these little fellows are showing up at people's houses, acting totally insane, like coming up to the doors and baring teeth and being crazy. Then they'll tip over and seem to be comatose, and then they'll wake up again. So while it might seem like they are zombies, which is what a lot of people are saying, I mean, it seems like it's a really large number for it to be getting the kind of press that it's getting. But ultimately, it's been determined that this is a form of distemper, which most dogs and cats are vaccinated against. But for whatever reason, it is making its way through the ranks of the raccoons in Ohio.
I think it must be a slow news thing, because the most recent article that I found was a Fox Denver article. So this is the Fox affiliate in Denver is like, we should write up this Ohio story. They're only like a 20-hour drive to our east.
If we hear more about the raccoons taking over the streets of Ohio, we'll keep you posted. And let's see, do you want to dive into the next one?
And in the Apocalypse.
Yep.
Keeping us waiting for another year. I feel like we've already kind of talked about how disappointing that was. But I am excited to see it eventually. I just think that they probably shouldn't have released all those trailers last August.
I think that they thought that they were going to get there a lot more quickly than what happened.
Yeah.
I also think that they had to do a little bit more with it for some reason. So anyway, it is going to be out December 7th of this year. The trailers look good, but we'll see. And I'm sure we will review it just in time for the holiday season. And we're talking about it now.
Yeah. Weird bit of trivia about this is that one of the creators writers of this movie was the guy who was behind the Ryan Gosling would eat his cereal YouTube.
Really?
Or maybe that was Vines. I don't know if that was YouTube. I guess it was YouTube. Yeah, and he's
YouTube,
apparently no longer with us, passed away, which is a double shock.
That is very sad. I was unaware of all these things. You're killing me with this sad news today.
Sorry about that.
And even in more sad news, or sort of old sad news, I don't even know what this is. Forbes, our friendly site of zombie coverage or whatever, has brought up the Frank Darabont issue again. I'm not quite sure why this has arisen again. It feels weird. But anyway, they have a few different articles, and as you've pointed out, they have some very strong opinions about everything.
Yeah, they really dislike The Walking Dead Prime, and they really, really love Fear the Walking Dead.
I feel like somebody's got some kind of, like, I don't know, skin in the game with it or something.
I don't know, HA. I think that you and I are kind of on the same page with them right now, because we kind of both liked last season of Fear the Walking Dead, with some exceptions. And we both are, you know, our overall review of Season 6 was, oh, I'm not loving this. And then so far in Season 7, it's like, well, the cell was good, and there have been a couple of other good scenes. But for the most part, I think we're on the same page that it's not awesome either.
Yes, and we're definitely on the same page with these last two episodes, I would imagine. Or I hope we are. But no, it's just interesting, and it's interesting that they're bringing this particular article out right now. I'll figure out the time later, but it just seems odd.
It's curious. So they're kind of retreading the why Jeffrey DeMunn asked to have Dale killed off the show after Frank Darabont was fired. Apparently, Darabont's reasoning for his rage was that they were lazy, unprofessional writers who were writing bad content during season 2, or maybe it was between 1 and 2. I'm not sure. He wanted the show to have a bigger budget per episode and have fewer episodes per season. If you recall, season 1 had 6 episodes. Mm-hmm. Season 2 had 13, but the same budget, I think. Yep. And so that was part of why he was. So says he and Forbes. That's why he was so pissed. So now we have, I think, 16 to 18 episodes per season. It's definitely only. I think it's 16 is pretty standard, but they've actually cut the budget. The original budget was like above $3 million, and now it's then it went down to $2.75 million per episode.
Well, and if you remember, the season 2 had some really tough things going on in it, so I can understand the anger about it. When
you consider what the problems were in season 2, that it was slow, it dragged. These are the same kind of problems we face with like the last 2 episodes, certainly, that we watched. An hour each, and they had very little actual story to tell. And season 2 was basically the hunt for Sophia, and it took 13 hours. I don't remember exactly how many episodes it took.
The hunt for Sophia, and as I call it, the farm days. Like, they never get off the damn farm.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's kind of curious, but maybe they're bringing it up because they are seeing some similarities between what was happening then and now. And one of the other articles that you found was about that the ratings for The Walking Dead are not going to go up. Or there's some conjecture that they're not going to go up. And, you know, I guess I can see that happening. But this is some of the things that we've been talking about before. They're still pulling in an enormous number of people to watch this. They're not taking into account that people are definitely watching this not during like the actual view, like airing time of these things. And even if it doesn't go up, they're still creating content related to the Walking Dead franchise. We have Fear the Walking Dead, and now we're hearing about this other potential show, which I suspect that you're correct, that this is going to be coming out sooner rather than later.
A third or a second spin-off, rather?
Yeah. Sorry. The second spin-off. But like even taking into account the current ratings, those are really solid when you view it against what is going on in general.
And what else? Like, one of the good points that he does make in this article is Breaking Bad never really got above 4 to 6 million, which is where Walking Dead has sunk to from 17. And, Mad Men never got above 3 million. all of their other top tier premiere shows have never done nearly as well as The Walking Dead.
Right. So anyway, there is that. Are you ready to dive in to our titillating reviews of these next 2 episodes?
I guess, sure.
I sense that this may be a quick one.
Yeah, I'm pretty ambivalent about these 2 episodes.
Yeah. There's a lot that didn't and still doesn't make sense to me about these episodes, both in the storytelling, but also in the character decisions that some of the characters are making or that the writers are having them make.
Of the 2, I prefer the first one for sure. I prefer Rockin' the Road.
Yeah.
Because not only does it have a pretty cool set piece in the second half of the episode, it has a lot of movement in terms of the group goes to a lot of places and has a lot of conversations.
They have a lot of conversations, but still not a lot gets done.
Yeah, true.
There are a couple of ridiculous things in this that, they're what they are. But yes, I definitely much prefer this to the next episode, to New Best Friends. I feel like this is the big Rick's group convincing the kingdom to ally with them. And there's a lot of back and forth about it and a lot of things where you think you know which way they're going to go. But ultimately, King Ezekiel is not into it because he doesn't want to risk his people's lives.
We're only like 20 minutes past the point where Rick was like, I think I'm ready to fight back.
Well, right. So that is actually very funny, is because it's like suddenly he has a short conversation with Michonne and he's all back into Rick mode again. And suddenly the whole group, despite the fact that he's been acting like this, everybody's like behind him, Michonne. And we see this like sort of reaffirmed faith in Rick in this episode and the next episode, which I was very confused by, because I'm like, dude has been acting crazy and strange and definitely like I've given up for the last, like, in some pretty significant interactions. I just don't know that I feel like the group would totally be behind him as quickly as they did, but I guess you kind of got to do it for storytelling purposes.
That and they don't want to end up like Dr. Pete beaten to death in the street.
We got Daryl back in the game, though he seems also very confused by everything going on. And I kind of thought it was odd because it's like, they don't get what they want from the kingdom, although the kingdom offers to give Daryl asylum, and Daryl's like, no, I'm going to come back with you guys. Daryl knows better. He knows he can't go back to Alexandria. Like, why on earth would he think that would be a good idea? He knows the Saviors are going to come after him, right?
Maybe he just thinks he's going to like go squat out in the woods anytime that the Saviors come, which you probably could get away with, because what, are they going to comb the whole woods? No. Yeah. But also the beginning of this episode is good. By the way, it's also written by Angela Kang, directed by Greg Nicotero. 12 million viewers. And the title was Rockin' the Road, after a story that Rick tells that he says his mother used to tell him, and it's got a lot of detail, and it's kind of
ridiculous. Yeah, a little ridiculous. Is that what you're gonna say?
No, I was gonna say it's like just the details are a little gory for like a story that your mother would tell a child. Anyway,
fairy tales, dude.
Beginning of this episode is Hilltop related, and it's another Gregory. And then Gregory and the cast conversation. I do love Gregory and anybody conversations just because he is so much fun to watch on screen.
I know, he's pretty good.
This is, I think, the first time that he calls Maggie Margaret, and he calls Rick Ricky, which I really like. And the fact that they all talk about wanting to punch his face in after the meeting, but nobody does it.
And again, why is he still in power? Questions, lots of questions about that.
And he gets to sing rhetorical at people. Anyway, it's a really fun conversation that he's like, I'm not going to help you. And then, as happens like every time, everybody else in Hilltop just does whatever they want. They don't listen to him. So they all, like about 12, a group of 12 of them, volunteer to fight the Saviors.
Yep.
Even though we don't know, the only one we meet is Birdie. We still don't know any of their other names. Hilltop remains a somewhat
mystery in its
anonymous community of farmers. Some of them are getting recognizable, like the tough guy looking dudes. There's a guy with a man bun. You're like, that guy, he knows how to handle business. He's got a man bun.
The man bun is solid, definitely.
Yeah, it's tight. But yeah, so they go from Hilltop, and then Jesus is like, "It's time for you to meet King Ezekiel." We're like, wait a second, did we know that Jesus knew King Ezekiel, or we just is this his new information, right?
Yeah, I thought it was new information too, but okay.
But that makes sense. He's the one who spends a lot of time outside the walls, so no problem.
Plus, he's Jesus with that hair.
So then we get into another scene of people reacting to Shiva like what, which is that's always good too, and Jerry is always good too. Mm-hmm. There was a scene in here that features it's a bunch of kids doing archery practice. Mm-hmm. Here's your pro tip, little TV knowledge. 2 of those kids are Nicoteros.
Well, that's not shocking.
It's not shocking. Oh well,
No.
I think it's the first time that he got his kids into a project. So he mentioned it on Talking Dead, I recall. And that's, I guess, the extent of the interesting things that happen in the first half. They get turned down by Ezekiel and expect to be expected. I think it's kind of Morgan's fault, but
Yeah, it's totally Morgan's fault. And Morgan is like, even after hearing all of this stuff and hearing what's been happening, I get where Morgan's coming from, but you just want to, honestly, you just want to hit him. You're like, dude, wake up. Like, this is crazy.
well, in a way, he should be able to say people will die.
Yeah.
And everybody should just nod and be like, yeah, but that's what we have to do to get out of this, because
Right.
people are going to die anyway.
Yeah, of course they are. And I feel like much more of this is proven within the next interaction that they all have with the saviors. And basically, it doesn't matter whether you're following the rules or not. They're going to make you hurt, and they're going to make you pay. And it's all arbitrary, and they have the power over you. And that's what really bothers me. It totally bothers me about Ezekiel's decision, and that he doesn't turn around on it, because he then witnesses firsthand. He knows what they're capable of, and ultimately they're never going to stop. They're always going to want more. They're already questioning what they're giving them and basically saying, oh, this isn't the right amount, when it clearly is. And they just look to start stuff. And, instead of basically seeing that and seeing how they react towards Morgan, towards Richard, and then trying to come up with a plan, he chastises them. And it's just, to me, it's just a little too annoying, and like, it just feels like too much. Like, and of course you can see that Richard is going to do something after this behavior, so maybe it's just to show why he would turn, but it doesn't explain Morgan's behavior. So, I don't know. I just found it to be annoying, and again, much like the last 2 episodes, just reminded me of why I hate this season so much.
So the cold open also is this kind of confusing scene with Seth Gilliam, Father Gabriel, who the way it's shot, it appears that he just is on guard duty and then is like, I'm gonna go and empty the pantry and drive all of this stuff out of Alexandria.
Yeah, that was weird that's how they chose to show it, so you thought he was betraying them. But of course, everybody knew something else was up.
I don't know that I did. It seemed so... Even like at the end of the next episode when he's explaining what happened, I'm like, that doesn't jive with what I saw.
Well, right. I mean, it was supposed... I think they were trying to like deliberately cut out the other part to make it like that mysterious. But it was not well done, which is what I mean about the storytelling.
Yeah.
That's just a strange way to display what is happening. So, it's sort of like, oh, we're going to make you think that he betrayed them. It's like, oh, God, please.
Honestly, I was watching him do all this, and I was like, he's got some plan. It's not a betrayal. I didn't believe that he would betray the group, but I couldn't figure out what his play was.
Right.
And even after he's explaining to Rick later, it's just, I'm like, really? Are you lying now, or was the show lying to me earlier? Because that's what you have to basically justify. And I don't, if the director, if the cameraman is going to lie to me, then I've got real problems with that.
Right. And so that's confusing. Also confusing, but a very big set piece, is the part of this episode where Rick and his merry band go to like, were they scoping out the saviors? Is that what they were doing? Because it wasn't clear to me exactly what they were doing. Were they doing reconnaissance to see, like, their home base?
I think they're just trying to get home, but they have to drive down this highway.
Well,
which,
and they
is
discovered
blocked and
they discover roadblock. Okay, so I have so many questions about this. One is that the saviors would do, I don't know, it seems like a kind of an elaborate thing for a herd of walkers, and that they would know that they were coming that far in advance. I don't know. That just seemed a little strange to me, that they would go through this very elaborate thing, including explosives and all this other stuff. Why bother? It doesn't seem like that big of a herd that ultimately comes down. And then with Rick's group, sort of trying to get the explosives and things like that. Did anything about that whole scene bother you?
No, I like that. Honestly, I like this whole part of this episode. That's kind of what made me sit up and be like, okay, so the first half was all diplomacy. Now we're into some like crazy action stuff.
Well,
the only thing that seemed a little out of whack was the herd appeared and then it seemed like to speed up. I don't know.
Right,
like
they're kind of shambling, and then they're I don't know. That just was. It's suddenly like super urgent. Also made urgent by the fact that they're hearing stuff over the walkie-talkies with Negan saying that Daryl has escaped and they're going to go raid Alexandria. So I understand that caused them some anxiety. But I think the thing about and I think maybe this was to show Rick's team together, working together, having like a plan, and also an excuse to have like some really cool kind of crazy set piece. The idea of driving down the highway with a big wire and taking out the legs of all the walkers, that was pretty good. Cool.
It also gave us an excuse not to totally despise Rosita, because even though she's just been like a sourpuss for the last several episodes, she at least does appear to know explosives. So that's like, all right, I guess you don't have to get booted necessarily right away. But yeah, she is still just so sour and not fun.
Well, I did enjoy the part where she said stepping back a couple of feet isn't going to make a difference if this goes off.
And, what about the part where she says to Sasha, hey, we both had sex with the same dead guy. It doesn't mean I'm your friend.
Yeah, I just felt that was annoying.
That's some real good, like, hey, group, go team.
Yep. But anyway, so we got them working together, and then they blow up some things. They blow up some of the zombies, so that's all good. The raid happens as expected, and the saviors do exactly what you expect them to do, and then leave with the threat that if Daryl ever shows up again, it's on them, and the usual typical savior threats. Mm-hmm. And then this is when the wonderful Father Gabriel scene pops in, or the whole storyline pops back in. So after the saviors leave, they have to figure out what happened.
Yeah. And they find the clue.
The weird clue, which I think is so strange. Like, he had time to write boat in his journal. How did he even know about the boat?
In his Bible.
And so they ultimately track him. But I love how they're like, Daryl could have tracked him, right? And then they end up in this trash heap. And suddenly it's like Mad Max Thunderdome.
Well, it doesn't feel... Yeah. Well, I guess at first it's just a bunch of people with the same hairstyle. It's just the hair is the fact that they're all wearing black are the weird things. You're like,
black
okay, what's
and
going
gray,
on?
And they had to really find these uniforms. So I don't know if they like rated some emo outfitting post or something. But
the first time I watched this, I was excited because we didn't know what was going to happen next. And Rick's big smile at the end of this episode is totally on point, right? Like that is the reaction we want Rick to have.
Right, because there's new people that might be convinced to be allies. And
also, after the car scene when Michonne, and he's like all sweaty, he's just like survived by the skin of his teeth getting into the SUV, and Michonne's like, it's okay, you can smile, we won, we live, we get to live. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't actually smile, but he does at the end of this scene, and you're okay, this is what it takes to make Rick smile, is just having a bunch of people to point guns at him with a silver lining, I guess.
And then, I feel like I was excited to see them too until the next episode happened.
Yeah.
Which maybe is why I was having these thoughts when they appeared in this episode, because I knew it was coming. But basically, hopping into the next episode, which is called New Best Friends, directed by Jeffrey January and written by Channing Powell. We get to see this group, which is called, this is the group called the Scavengers. And I have a lot of questions about why they're so weird.
Yeah, well, I think we all have those questions.
At least at this point. Like, they seem to have joined and have this very, very strange community. And it's not that the kingdom is any strange. Like, the kingdom's also weird.
But it's just Ezekiel who is the weird one. He's the only one playing a role.
He
Jerry,
is, but
I guess, a little
other
bit.
people are kind of following along with him, so that's kind of,
yeah.
you know. So
Yeah,
that's,
the guys on horseback, we're all talking like, "What? How dare thou enter the domain?" Yeah,
Right.
so okay, it's not just Ezekiel.
Yeah. So and they make strange demands. They talk weird. They have odd ways of gathering and going
Walking
into
in
little
circles.
spirals, and so, you know, so there's that stuff going on.
So the direction that this group got, well, after they got out of hair and makeup, which was just like apply engine oil to your head,
Yep.
and then have a mullet or something. I'm not sure. Just like swoop all your hair back. Their other direction that they got was look super disinterested in everything that's going on.
I'm telling you, these are like the emo kids of The Walking Dead.
And then Pollyanna McIntosh, who plays Jadis, their leader, is the leader because she can have bangs.
Nobody else
Everybody
has bangs but her.
Nobody else has bangs. It's... Yeah, man. Breon and Tamiel and Jadis are the three scavengers whose names
Like, who
we get
has
to
these
learn.
names? Give me a break.
Well, also, okay, fast forward to season 8. I guess we will not do spoilers, but some of this is I feel like they're actually backpedaling majorly at this point right now in season 8, or the last few
they're
episodes.
totally
'Cause they're
trying
like,
to
how do we
retrofit. Yeah, absolutely.
How do we explain all of this weird stuff about the scavengers? And so, and if you are up to date on season 8, you might be like, "Yeah, guys, just get with the times. It's X or Y."
But at this, I'm trying to not admit, or I'm trying to not spoil things, because at this point, the mystery was still there. Though
The mystery is there until like this time.
Yeah.
Next, it's you have to wait a whole year to figure out what the hell's going on with Jadis and Breon and Tamiel.
Tamiel. Release Tamiel.
Step away from Tamiel. Yeah, man, I did. This episode is just annoying. Like, and it's a little odd. It's a little desperate that Rick's group is like, we need to be friends, and they've been doing this the last 2 episodes, right? They're like, oh, please be our friends. We need to be friends, and then people are just like, no, we don't want to be friends. Fight this zombie with spikes all over it.
Yeah, I thought that was the part where you were screaming, because it was so ridiculous.
Well, I kind of like that. I like the idea of like fitting a zombie with a metal helmet and spikes
Stuart,
all over it.
His name is Winston.
His Winslow.
Sorry, Winslow.
At least he doesn't have like a fantasy generator name.
Yeah, they kind of prove themselves to this group, and they bargain with them in strangely worded bargaining ways.
Yeah, it's super annoying the way they talk, the way she talks.
It's terrible. All of them, though. All of them
Well-
talk in this very odd, stilted manner.
And it is Mad Max, but you know what? Mad Max benefits from the fact that they're like at least one generation removed from an apocalypse.
Well,
These
this
people, they're like
they're-
2 years.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this is crazy. Even the group of all women that live by the Oceanside, the Oceansiders or whatever they are, don't talk like this. So just very odd. But anyway, they've got some new allies, so that's good.
Who they now have to the deal that they have is
It's
at
a
this
terrible
point,
deal.
Not only are they having to scrape up supplies for the next saviors, payoff. Now they also have to find stuff for these people. It's almost like they're just borrowing as fast as sums of money, and the interest is just piling up. It doesn't seem like unless they get really lucky. It doesn't seem like this is going to work out as a gamble. And should you trust Pollyanna McIntosh's character Jadis? Should you?
Should you? I don't know. She's pretty weird, and she speaks strangely, and then they all walk in circles and go back into their little trash heap.
The walking in circles. Like, I don't think you were supposed to be able to see people in the background literally turn around and do a 180 and walk the other way that they were just walking. You're supposed to just be like, whoa, what kind of magical community is this? And then you see somebody in the background just do like an about face, and you're like, oh, they're just doing this on purpose. They're being weird. Okay.
Well, and then there's the other piece where it's like they knew where all these supplies are and they just basically wait for people to get them and then they take the stuff from the people. They don't put themselves at risk, so that's the big thing you're supposed to take away. But I have to imagine that a community that's this big living there and knew that there was this big group of supplies in a place, it wasn't ultimately that hard for Rick and his group to get those supplies off the boat. I mean,
it was, they could have built a boat themselves and gone. No,
but you know what I mean. Like, it wasn't. If you knew that was there and you knew all what was happening there, I just don't think you would have like left it when your community needs it. So there's that. But anyway, we'll find out more about this fun group of people later. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, the other big storyline here is Daryl, Richard, and Carol. And this is one of the things that truly bugs me about the storytelling in this episode. It's a lot of cloak and dagger. You know, we see Daryl bonding with Richard. We think they're becoming allies because Richard just had that wonderful incident with the Saviors. And he's already been talking, saying that he thinks that they should be going to war against the Saviors. So we know that Richard's in like that camp. Mm-hmm. But really it was the last incident with the Saviors that threw him over the edge. And he has this little bonding chat with Daryl about, you know, the crossbow and all that kind of thing. And has this whole elaborate plan in order to start this and to start basically taking things back. And then it just kind of goes south really quickly when the big reveal is that his plan is to have Carol killed because Ezekiel cares so much about her. And there's this like drawn out interaction between them where Daryl's like, what's the woman's name who you're going to do this to? And it's like, he won't tell him. And it just felt so contrived to me and ridiculous. And then the other thing that I just cannot figure out is why does Ezekiel adore Carol so much? Like, why does she get all this sort of favoritism? Because
the producers are shipping them, I'm pretty sure.
Well, of course they are, but if you're going to do it, show some at least groundwork for doing it, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that they have. And then there's a lot of things, basically everything to do with Daryl in this episode is about somebody not telling somebody something. So first it's Richard not admitting that it's Carol, although ultimately he confesses. And then Daryl pretends that he found out that Carol was there just by happening by, which we know he knows she's there because of Richard. And then ultimately he doesn't tell her that Glenn and Abraham and Olivia have all died. And you know, he has this weird conversation with Morgan later about it. And ultimately with Daryl and Carol, I don't know that he would have done that. He and Carol have always had a lot of honesty between each other, so this seems like a strange decision to me, as is the decision not to tell Morgan that Richard was planning to have her killed, or not to tell anybody that Richard was planning to have her killed as a ploy to draw Ezekiel into the battle.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. I never thought that he should have definitely told Morgan about that. Because this comes back to haunt them.
Like, I just don't get this. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, one of his, like, the arguments that they're having in front of Shiva's cage is about whether to go to the battle or not. And Morgan's still saying that I can't be a part of this. Well, wouldn't it make sense for Daryl to say, well, you better be thinking about this because this is what is going to happen, and this is what almost happened to Carol. And it seemed so strange to me and just like a glaring like mistake that this conversation wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was part of why I was screaming at the screen. Just because it felt like, oh God, they are going to set this up, and when, you know, not spoiling anything, but you're right, like they're going to pay for the lack of that knowledge later. So watching it happen again and knowing what's to come, you're just like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So, yes, that's my review in a nutshell of this episode, these 2 episodes.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same vibes as you. I kind of tuned out for this episode a little bit, even though I did watch. I was watching the scavenger stuff just to be like, why again? How? What?
Yeah.
But a lot of this, like Daryl, I'm a little worn out, honestly. Just I need this to speed up. I need the story to speed up. We know that that's not going to happen because I'm still waiting for it to speed up in 2018. So we'll find out when, if ever, that will happen.
So if you'd like to continue or had the similar frustrations that we did watching these episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or tweet at us, reanimatedpcast on the Twitters, or you can leave a note on our website, reanimatedpodcast.com.
The next 2 episodes will be recapping our hostilities and calamities, and Say Yes, another Greg Nicotero directed. So he did a lot this season. He doesn't. I feel like he only usually does the like premieres and finales or something, but he did like 4 episodes this season.
Yeah.
So that'll be episodes 11 and 12, and then we'll be on the home stretch of 13 through 16 to finish off season 7.
So, if you'd like to continue to join us in that slog, join us next time. And until then, ciao.
Adios.